Welcome to the table. I'm Mark, one of the pastors here at Providence Church, and we're so glad you've decided to join us here at the table. We're going to have some great conversations here. The table is broken down into 3 video sessions called Table Talks. These are conversations where you'll get the chance to hear from us, and then we'll get the chance to hear from you. That might be through some questions we'll ask you as part of each table talk or during real in-person conversations. In this first table talk, you're going to hear the story of Providence Church, how we got started, how we've grown over the last several years, and where God is leading us. Then, in Table Talk 2, you'll be introduced to a tool that will help you identify some of the unique gifts God's given you for use in your own personal life and with the church. And in Table Talk 3, the Providence staff will introduce you to our ministries and next steps for you to connect with us. In that final session, you'll also learn what it means to become a covenant member of Providence Church, if that's something you're interested in. So let's get started. Each of us have entered into this great movement of God at different points in the journey. I joined the team in 2015, but knew about Providence Church since Pastor Jacob came to a pastor's meeting and announced what God was calling him to do. We prayed for him, and I've been praying for this church ever since. Stories are so important, and we want to be able to hear yours. At the end of Table Talk 1, you'll have the opportunity to send us a bit of your story. But before we get to that, here's Jacob Armstrong, the founding pastor of Providence Church.
Hey, thanks, Mark, and hey, everybody. I am thrilled to tell you about the start of Providence Church, and here's where it starts for me. I had actually never thought about starting a church or even that a church was started. The churches that I knew just always seemed to be there. But one day, as I was sitting in the back row of my class in seminary, which is a graduate school for pastors, a presenter came, a church planter, they said, which I learned was just what they call a pastor who has started a church. And he gave this probably 45-minute presentation on what it had been like for him to be a part of starting a new church. Meeting in a school, bringing chairs in, taking chairs out, all the things that go with starting a new church. And during that presentation, I don't remember taking a breath, meaning it captivated me. And in that moment, I had this thought that, God, this is what you have called me to do. So I spent the rest of the afternoon sort of dreaming about what it would be like to start a new church. And I came back to my buddies on the back row that afternoon. I asked them, hey, what's your new church gonna be like? Thinking that everybody had felt the same way that I had. And they said without exception, man, I would never want to do that. That didn't sound fun at all. And it was the first moment for me that I began to think that maybe God was calling me to this. Doesn't mean it's for everybody, but there was something in my heart that caught fire thinking about what it would be like to go into a community and try to reach new people for Jesus Christ. So I started dreaming about that, talking about it. Rachel and I read books about starting new churches. It was just something that was on our hearts as we were preparing for ministry. And one day we were driving back to our hometown, which is Mount Juliet, to go see our parents. And on the interstate, we saw all these signs on the interstate that said this: Providence, live, shop, play. We didn't know what Providence was, but we got off the interstate exit there in Mount Juliet. And Providence, what we see now, was just this new community that was being built from the dust up. And we drove back through some neighborhoods that were being started, and we felt something in us stir. And we wondered, God, would you call us back home to start a new church? Well, in my zeal, I think I was 25 years old, I set up a meeting the next day. Actually, I got a meeting with the bishop of the Tennessee Conference in the United Methodist Church. I was a United Methodist pastor. This is my boss. It's sort of like my boss's boss. And I got a meeting with him. And I sat down and I shared with him my dream of starting a new church. I told him about Mount Juliet and my hope that I could go back to my hometown and be a part of starting something new. And instead of him kind of granting me permission for that opportunity, he said, no, I think you need to go back to where you're serving. And so I did. And I went back and served a year, and then another year, and then into another year. And I thought maybe this dream for me of starting a new church would never happen. As we went into sort of a third year, Rachel and I had taken a group of college students to Atlanta for an event. And while I was there, I kept feeling like God was asking me a question. And the question was this: Jacob, will you go wherever I want you to go? And I would say, yes, God, I'll go wherever you want me to go, as long as it's, back to Mount Juliet to start a church. We've been over this, but that isn't what God was working in my heart. And then one night, Rachel and I were back in our hotel room, the Holiday Inn Express there in downtown Atlanta. And Rachel said to me, she said, Jacob, I feel like God has been asking me a question the whole time I've been here. And I knew what it was, but I said, yeah, what's that? And she said, I feel like God's asking us, will we go wherever God wants us to go? And, I guess a pastor should have already done this 100 times up to this moment, but this is the one I remember when Rachel and I prayed together and said, okay, God, we will go wherever you want us to go. And so we began a process of praying and talking to people we trust, and we began to discern that God was calling us to be missionaries. And so we applied with a mission organization, went through this whole process, and actually in the summer of 2007 flew to Monterrey, Mexico. And I was offered a job at a place called the Seminario Juan Wesley, which is the John Wesley Seminary in Monterrey, Mexico. And Rachel was offered a placement at an English-speaking school. And we were showed the place that we could possibly live. And I remember us walking down the sidewalk in Monterrey, Mexico, holding hands, sometimes with tears, saying, God, why in the world would you call us to this place where we don't know the language, don't know what we could do for your kingdom here, but we believe that if you want us to come here, we'll come and see what you could do, what Jesus could do in this city through us. And so we went home and did the hardest thing we'd done up to that point, and that was tell our parents that we were taking their grandbabies to Monterrey, Mexico. I told the church that I'd been at for 8 years that this is what we felt like God was calling us to do. We put ourselves out there. And I don't know if you've ever been in this spot where you need a bunch of yeses for something to happen, a bunch of doors to open. And in our case, in this situation, they all closed. Every yes that we needed turned out to be a no, and so we were really confused. We thought God had called us to this faraway place, and here we were in the same place we were when we started. And it was around that time that I was invited to go to a conference in Kansas City, a United Methodist conference, a gathering of pastors, and I went. And while I was there, the first day I was there were 3 people who sort of lead in the Methodist church in Tennessee who came up to me and they said, hey, Jacob, have you heard about the new church that's being started in Tennessee? And I said, no, I haven't heard about it. Where's it going to be? And they said, it's going to be in Mount Juliet in this new area called Providence. Have you ever heard of it? And I said, yeah, I've heard of it. And one night while I was there, they took me out to dinner and they asked me, would you consider being the pastor to start a new church in Mount Juliet in Providence, which was the dream of my heart. But I was really confused because I thought I was supposed to be a missionary. And so it was a Sunday morning. I got up. I was supposed to be going to church, but I just kept driving. I remember the exit that I got off of. It was Gardner, Kansas. And I pulled over the rental car to the side of the road, and there was this cornfield. And I just took a few steps out, and I needed a place to pray. And I just talked to God, and I said, God, why did you do all this missionary stuff in my heart? Why did you make us think we were going to Monterrey, Mexico, and now it looks like you're giving me my dream to go to Mount Juliet and be a pastor? And I did not hear an audible voice. There was not a field of dreams moment, but I did sense in my spirit that God said to me, it's because I wanted you to have that heart for your hometown. I wanted you to cry over that city. I wanted you to drive through Mount Juliet and dream about what Jesus could do in this place. And if I'm being honest with you now, as we gather here at the table, I was on my way to becoming, a pretty good religious professional at the time. And God jerked this knot in my heart to want to see disconnected people who don't know Christ, people who are feeling far off, to come close and know Jesus. So we opened ourselves up to that opportunity, Rachel and I did, and we moved, right? Just a couple months after that, we moved to Mount Juliet. I moved in with my parents because we didn't have a place to live yet. And my first day on the job was January the 2nd, 2008. And I was walking out of the back door of the house that I grew up in. I had this new laptop in a bag. And Rachel stopped me at the door on the way out, and she said, hey, Jacob, where are you going? And I was like, what do you mean, where am I going? We just uprooted our lives, moved here, moved in with my parents to start the church. I said, I'm going to start the church. But she said, yeah, I know, but literally, where are you going? And I said, I have no idea. And that's a big part of the story here at Providence Church, which is answering the question, will you go wherever God wants you to go? And even as you say yes to that, the steps and where you go in that are sometimes I have no idea. And we still say that at Providence. God will go wherever you want us to go. And oftentimes we say we have no idea exactly what to do next, but we are trusting in you. I invite you in this time to consider if God might be calling you to be a part of a community of people who are focused on Jesus and on the people that have not yet come to know Jesus. What we say sometimes is people who feel disconnected from God and the church. And so I invite you to pray about joining us in this dream.
Thank you, Jacob. As you're learning more about Providence Church, you'll hear a lot of this language. Our vision is to see those who feel disconnected from God and the church find hope, healing, and wholeness in Jesus Christ. Who feels disconnected from God and the church? Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your neighbor. We are here in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and online for people everywhere. It's our goal to be a place where you can seek and receive God's love for you again or for the first time, and so that you can be a part of welcoming others, offering Christ, and serving the world. Seeing lives changed is what we love, and it happens every day around here. Will you be a part of that with us? And who knows, by the time you get to our third talk, you might be saying that you believe in the vision of this church and want to be a part of it. We invite you to take the next step. Just complete the quick form on this page, and you'll be directed to Table Talk 2. Thank you for joining us at the table.